You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the October 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Michigan City Plan Commission. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to everyone present in person and online. This is the Michigan City Plan Commission regular meeting, Tuesday, October 22, 2024. We're meeting here in the council chambers, and we'll call the meeting to order. And our planning director, Mr. York, is out of town. He's online on Zoom, so we welcome him online. But Assistant Director Sylvia is with us, so she'll be calling the roll for the attendance and for the votes. So go ahead and make the roll call.
Of course. Ross Balling,
Here.
Antonio Connolly,
Here.
Brian Dabney,
Present.
Bruce DeMedici,
Present.
Daniel Granquist,
Here.
Roscoe Hoffman,
Present.
Fred Klinder,
Here.
Rose Tejeda.
Here.
Did I say that right?
Hmm.
Timothy Warner,
Present.
Attorney Steve Hill.
Present.
So ends your roll call.
We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We have a couple petitions and the standard agenda here. Is there a motion to approve or change?
So move.
I'll second.
I'll call for the vote. Ross Balling,
Yes.
Antonio Connolly,
Yes.
Brian Dabney,
Aye.
Bruce DeMedici,
Aye.
Daniel Granquist,
Yes.
Roscoe Hoffman,
Aye.
Fred Klinder,
Yes.
Rose Tejeda,
Yes.
Timothy Warner.
Aye.
So ends your vote. Motion to approve.
Next item on the approved agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, a regular hybrid meeting back in September 24, 2024. Everybody's had a chance to review that, take a look at it. Any comments, corrections, or is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Support.
I will call for the vote. Ross Balling,
Yes.
Antonio Connolly,
Yes.
Brian Dabney,
Aye.
Bruce DeMedici,
Aye.
Daniel Granquist,
Yes.
Roscoe Hoffman,
Aye.
Fred Klinder,
Yes.
Rose Tejeda,
Yes.
Timothy Warner.
Aye.
So ends your vote. Minutes approved.
Next item on the agenda are the petitions. The petitions that will be presented tonight at the public hearing. We have petition 903-24, paren 1, Pyramid Properties requesting PUD, the Moore project, approval for construction of residential townhomes and villas located at Moore Road / Highway 12. It's represented by Attorney Anthony Novak. This has been continued with public notice from September. Second petition is petition 903-24, paren 2, Pyramid Properties requesting a major subdivision, the Moore project, primary plat approval for construction of residential townhomes and villas located at Moore Road, Highway 12. Again, represented by Attorney Anthony Novak, and again continued from our public meeting and hearing back in September. As we begin the evening and the petitions here, we would call our attention to the policy of conduct and procedures. This is typically just presented in writing in the minutes of the meetings, but I would like to read it publicly before, as we begin the presentation of petitions tonight. The policy of conduct and procedures for the Michigan City Plan Commission states that the commission is composed of 9 members. Here, by statute, 5 must vote affirmatively to approve a petition. Thus, whenever less than a full commission is present, the petitioner may choose to continue the hearing. Now, anyone wishing to speak on a petition or to the commission in general at the end of the meeting may do so in person by approaching the speaker's roster and stating the name and address, or if on Zoom connection, by indicating their presence online and stating their name and address. Comments should be addressed to the Plan Commission and not to a petitioner or remonstrator or others in the audience. The Plan Commission vote is based on the evidence presented. So we have these two petitions, and we will welcome Attorney Novak to present the information needed, the data, the information, the documents as required in a petition for the Plan Commission to hear and address. And the City of Michigan City Council has passed ordinances for zoning ordinances, subdivision ordinances, PUD ordinances. So if the petitioner meets those requirements and complies with those standards, then the Plan Commission is authorized to approve that petition. So we will hear from the petitioner tonight, and we will review the evidence presented here. So thank you, attorney, and your clients, the petitioners here tonight. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, President Granquist. My name is Anthony Novak. I am an attorney with Newby Lewis, Kaminsky and Jones, a law firm in LaPorte at 916 Lincoln Way. Here tonight on behalf of the developer Pyramid Properties, Inc. Here with me tonight in person is the president of Pyramid Properties, Tony McCree. Also in person, Darla Aldred of Arcos Design, which is our project land planner and architect. On Zoom, we had, at one point, Wayne Richardson, and I think he's still on there, from Birch, Frank and Associates, which is our project's engineer. And then I also believe the city has available potentially Al Wallace from Burke, who is the city's outside consultant who has reviewed the stormwater plan. So while other professionals here tonight are much more qualified than myself to discuss certain substantive aspects of the project, my plan is to give a full overview of the project during this presentation, and to the extent there's substantive questions that I can't address, the other professionals in our team can. So here tonight, we have an exciting project for Michigan City for much needed housing. Through this development known as the Moore, the developer proposes building a multifamily residential complex with 40 total units on an 8.5 acre site zoned R2A at the former St. Andrew's Church, which is located near the intersection of US 12 and Moore Road in Birch Tree Lane. As a result of this property's repurposing, not only would Michigan City get much needed housing, but the county and the city themselves would have a piece of property back on the tax rolls. So whereas the last 67 years, this property has generated $0 in real estate tax as an exempt entity, for the next 67 years, it's estimated that this would produce an estimated $14 million in property tax, as well as other services to the city in the form of utilities and services. So the project tonight, as you saw in the application, is going to be developed in two tracks. Track one, or the first tract, is going to be the land closest to Moore Road and along Birch Tree Lane. It involves the construction of a private driveway and 16 townhomes, largely east of where the church currently sits. This first tract is what is also included in our request for primary plat major subdivision. The second tract, which will be largely west of the church going down 12 towards Swingbellies, will involve the construction of a private driveway and 24 villas west of the church. At Skylar's request, we've filed two applications on July 22nd, which are in front of you tonight. One is an application for primary PUD approval, and the other one is an application for approval of major subdivision. Despite there being two applications and hopefully two votes later tonight, I'm going to make one succinct presentation since the information applies to both. So prior to tonight's meeting, as you guys are aware, we have to send notice, which we did. We sent notice to the 85 adjoining landowners within 300 feet of this property. We also sent notice to the board of directors of both of the condo associations nearby, St. Andrews Village and Long Beach Point. We published notice in the Herald Dispatch, August 15th, August 22nd, and we provided copies of the development plans to all those who have asked. These applications were originally scheduled to be heard at August 27th. However, prior to that hearing, we got a request for a short extension from the boards of the associations asking that they have further time to review the plans because they had concerns regarding traffic, stormwater, conformance with US 12 corridor overlay district, open space requirement, and the tree ordinance. As a gesture of good faith, in what was read into the record in August, we did grant that extension of time so that they had the time to speak with their professionals. And also, we conducted an informational meeting with both members of the associations on September 23rd at the Long Beach Town Center. Meeting was roughly 90 minutes long. We think it was positive overall. And the four main concerns that we took away from those associations were short-term rentals. Specifically, they prefer that we not permit short-term rentals despite Indiana law and Michigan City ordinance permitting it. Parking on Birch Tree Lane. Specifically, Long Beach Point residents park along Birch Tree Lane, and they're concerned that this development would take away that public parking, traffic, and stormwater. At that meeting, Tony indicated that his intent is to be a good neighbor and have a development that complements those associations. We stressed our overall objective is to comply with code, except for the situations where we're going to be asking for development standards variances tonight. But with all other matters, stormwater particularly, our objective, our intent is to comply with ordinance so that we can build a development that is responsibly developed. We were ultimately scheduled to be heard at last September's meeting, but there wasn't the stormwater report available to Skylar's office, so it was tabled until tonight, and here we are in front of you. Prior to filing these applications, Tony met and discussed numerous times with city officials about how to develop this project. So while the current R2A zoning classification for this project would allow density of 68 units, after thorough neighborhood analysis, Tony has decided to build only 40 units, thereby sacrificing 28 available units so that he can develop this property in a way that will complement the surrounding properties, integrate the incoming Singing Sands Trail, and maximize the preservation of healthy trees on the property. The townhomes in that first tract, that's here in front of you for primary plat of major subdivision, the idea is to reflect a more modern version of Long Beach Point. Whereas the villas in the second tract, the idea there is to have a gated community with 11 duplexes, 22 units in total, 2 houses, so a total of 24 units to reflect a more modern version of St. Andrews Village. When it comes to stormwaters, our engineers at Birch have developed the project's stormwater plan and have had numerous conversations with Al and his team at Burke, as well as Skylar York. Rather than have me provide specific details on stormwater, which I'm certainly not qualified to do, my plan is to let the engineers discuss that aspect of the project after my initial presentation tonight. What I can say, however, is our stormwater plan will follow applicable ordinances and will be approved by Burke and the city. In addition to stormwater management, our engineers have done the traffic-related work on this project. So while I'll give an overview, Wayne from Birch will certainly ask any substantive questions that you may have. With 40 units upon completion, these units are estimated to produce less than 30 trips during peak hour and less than 144 exit and entry average weekday trips. Peak hour is actually based off of Moore Road, which is the busy thoroughfare right there. And that peak hour is 2:15 to 3:15, which is when Notre Dame School gets out. The projected trips in this development are less than a 5% increase in peak hour traffic and about a 17% increase to average daily traffic on Moore Road. Based on these figures, a traffic study is not required per INDOT standards. INDOT standards are applicable here because the city's ordinances indicate that when there are developments and there's traffic concerns, it is based off of INDOT standards. With INDOT, a traffic study is needed either when a residential development is creating at least 95 units or where a development will generate 100 or more added trips during the adjacent roadway's peak hour. Given we don't meet these thresholds, a traffic analysis is not required. Questions were presented to us how we came up with those 30 peak hour trips. And I'll try to hit this quickly so I don't bore you. Again, based off INDOT standards in a specific manual that they comply with. It's all about the development type code. We're a single family attached housing code. And based on our code and our number of units, for the 16 townhomes in tract 1, the generated trips during peak hour will be 12 trips. And when you add the 24 villas in tract 2, That's 17 trips, meaning the total for the development is 29 trips during peak hour. You compare that to the property's prior use as a 10,300 square foot church building with 200 feet, they could generate 106 Sunday peak hour trips, or if based off of, 106 peak hour trips. So even though a traffic study was not required, rest assured it was considered. For example, in consulting with the city and the city's recommendation, Tony is going to give up the existing entrance that comes off of Moore Road, which currently exists today. So the entrances to the development will only be along Birch Tree, so that there will be 2 entrances on Birch Tree, no entrances on Moore Road, and no entrance on Moore Road. When it comes to tree preservation, we did a tree study in 2023. Tony and Darla walked the property and identified the best clusters of high quality trees with the intent to integrate those into this development. In reality, all facets of the development, the quantity and design of the units, the streets, the stormwater, all influenced by the intent to retain high quality trees. By utilizing this PUD, we believe that we'd be able to do that. We've also met with the city forester to walk the property, and it's determined that while the west part of the property is heavily wooded, a majority of these trees are of low quality and need to be removed. The zoning ordinance notes conditions for allowing individual trees to be removed without penalty, and many of these trees we believe fall into those parameters. For other trees that can't be replaced, Tony will comply with the ordinance if any sort of monetary penalty or fine will be applied, up to a total maximum penalty of $25,000. So to state it bluntly, Tony could, this development could cut down all the trees and pay a maximum penalty of $25,000 and still comply with ordinance, though that is not our overall intent. When it comes to the open space requirement, Steve, if you wouldn't mind, I have an updated document that we sent to the city about a month ago that I just wanted to have each of you have in your possession. Thank you, Steve. So when it comes to the open space requirement, the PUD ordinance indicates that a development is required to have at least 25% dedicated open space, which will be set aside in perpetuity through a conservation easement. The ordinance goes on to state that the open space will be protected from all forms of development. It'll forever remain open space, and that any change in the use of that open space will require your approval. Ultimately, this development will meet this open space requirement, and it's estimated that we're going to have approximately 30% open space. For those of you that may have reviewed our plans a little bit more in depth, the initial documents indicated that we were going to have 53.8% as open space, but those figures included all of the development's common areas. Think sidewalks, landscaping, driveways, etc. That was my mistake. So the plan here is to reduce the open space requirement to include more appropriate areas. Think Singing Sands Trail along the train tracks, tree clusters, and other areas that aren't planned to be developed. Those areas will include both preserved existing trees and new trees that are planted. By way of example, I handed out this document in front of you, which you'll see highlights in green what these dedicated open spaces plan to be. As I mentioned, the dedicated open space has to be set aside through a conservation easement. I prepared that easement. I've worked with Attorney Hale. I think we have agreement on substance of it. Ultimately, it still needs to be finalized to develop a legal description, assuming this is the open space that will be used. There's a possibility that this could be modified a little bit because in speaking with Burke, to comply with stormwater, we may have to oversize our basins. So we may have to expand the stormwater basins. And if we do that, that would take away from the open space because stormwater detention and retention cannot be used for open space. So maybe modified a little bit, but it's going to be somewhat consistent with this 30%. I'll just touch on the US 12 overlay briefly. Given this property has frontage along US 12, it must comply with this ordinance, which our engineer, Wayne, has assured us that it does, except for one variance, which I'll be bringing up tonight, related to the requirement to have a 5-foot wide sidewalk along Moore Road. We don't plan to put in a 5-foot sidewalk along there, since there is no other sidewalk along the west side of Moore Road. So our plan is to be consistent with that. I do now want to talk about the two concerns that Long Beach Point have brought up, which is parking on Birch Tree Lane and short-term rentals. With the parking on Birch Tree Lane, as I indicated, the Long Beach Point residents, some of them do park along the south side of Birch Tree Lane, maybe even the north side as well, and are concerned that this development will take away the parking. Ultimately, however, as shown in our plans, maybe not this one, but the original plans, the city has a 60-foot right of way on Birch Tree Lane, and that right of way actually extends into our property. So we don't actually even own that area, so our development will not have any effect on it. Tony isn't in control of that, so ultimately whatever happens with the parking will be at the city's discretion. When it comes to short-term rentals, as indicated in Exhibit A to our application, the plan is to permit short-term rentals consistent with city ordinance and state law. While we hear the nearby association wish that we voluntarily impose these restrictions on the development, the developer has the right to develop this project in a manner that's consistent with law, and we plan to do that. As indicated, we are going to request variances tonight that I do want to formally read into the record. Our application indicated that there will be 12 sought in total, but with the addition of the one from the US 12 overlay, we're going to have 13. And finally, I'm going to correct one variance that I requested in our application that I had the numbers transgressed. So we're going to ask for 4 variances from Article 5 of the zoning ordinance governing multifamily residential district. The first, from Section 503, is minimum lot size square footage. The lots here are going to be 1,450 square feet, given these are going to be more like condos, rather than the minimum requirement of 5,000 square feet. The second is Section 503, minimum lot width. Lots here will be 24 feet in width, where the minimum is 35 feet. The third is going to be the minimum front yard setback. Code requires 10 feet. We're asking for 8. The fourth will be Section 504 regarding rear yard setback. This is the one I had wrong in the application. The minimum rear yard setback is 20 feet. We're asking for 20 feet when the ordinance requires 30 feet. Moving on from Article 5, we're requesting 6 from Section 6 of the subdivision ordinance. The first will be the subdivision right-of-way width. We're going to have a private road rather than a 50-foot dedicated right-of-way. The second one will be road pavement width. That private road will be 20 feet in width rather than the minimum 22 feet. There will be a cul-de-sac in the development that's going to be 940 feet in length rather than the maximum of 600 feet. There's a cul-de-sac outside radius. We're going to have it 40 feet rather than the required 50. For sidewalks, similar to St. Andrews Village, we are not going to have any sidewalks, but there will be some connection paths. And then finally, under Section 6 of the subdivision ordinance, similar to St. Andrews Village, the plan is to have an entry gate at the entrance to the villas in Track 2, which will be opened by a keypad or a tag. We then are asking for 2 from Article 19 dealing with monument signs. First, there will be a monument sign at the northeast corner of the property. So that's right at the corner of Birch Tree and Moore Road, closest to the school. We're going to have a monument sign that's going to be 8 feet in height rather than the maximum 6. And then second, if you go to the other entrance, so if you go down Birch Tree heading to the west and you hit Clemens Drive, there's an entrance to the development there. And when you enter into that development, there'll be a fork, one that can go into Track 1, one that can go into Track 2. And there will be 2 signs there, one identifying one of the tracks and the other one identifying the other tracks. That variance is required because technically only one monument sign is allowed. We're asking for 2. And then finally, that additional variance I requested from the US 12 overlay, we're asking for a variance not to have to put in a 5-foot sidewalk along Moore Road. So at this point, I'm going to wrap up our presentation. And my hope is that the Plan Commission tonight will grant both of our requests so that we can move this project forward and get much needed housing in Michigan City. To the extent this commission would like to see revisions to the plans or Burke, we'll gladly welcome those, but we would still ask for approval contingent upon any of those revisions. So at this point, our team is available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Novak. Please stay here. And I will ask for you to clarify for the commission, for the public, the concept of a PUD overlay to the underlying subdivision and why variances are applicable to a PUD that change the normal standard requirements for a subdivision. So explain how that is, so we're not just thinking it's just kind of off the wall.
Yeah, so PUD stands for Planned Unit Development, and the idea is that you're creating a brand new zoning classification for a specific piece of property. The idea is that with a PUD, you can come in front of you and essentially say, look, we're an R2A, and there are these underlying zoning development standards that we need to comply with. However, here's what the entire development is going to look like. We would ask that we can deviate from those underlying requirements to do this to be more consistent with what we're trying to do. And the idea is that that flexibility will be able to incorporate natural features of the property rather than being strictly construed to the setbacks and things such as the like. And if you guys would ultimately approve that, an ordinance would be adopted, and then that would become its own zoning classification.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any questions from the commission at this point?
Good evening, Mr. Novak.
Good evening.
So I have a couple questions. We'll start with the sidewalk. So I'm a resident and I'd like to access the Singing Sands Trail easement, and it's a muddy, cold day in November. Am I walking in mud to get to the easement?
You want to come up here and say it, since you know? This is a great question for Tony.
Hi, Tony McCready, Pyramid Properties. We'll be developing sidewalks through the neighborhood that'll connect to the Singing Sands Trail, and they'll have a gated keypad, key fob, or access code to be able to access that. There'll be 2, one at the back of the neighborhood for the townhomes. in the front of the neighborhood for townhomes and one in the back for the villas.
So great. So my next question concerns the smaller lots, units, and setbacks. And I believe that I understand it's an economic driver there, and it's not really my position to question how the economics work, but I just would like to see some comment on whether it's going to, and perhaps people in the audience care about that. Is this going to result in sort of a diminution of the profile of the neighboring community if the units are small, et cetera?
Well, the original design was meant to mimic exactly what Long Beach Point is doing, just a larger residence. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I don't know about the other units, so I'm not going to dive too deeply into stuff I don't know.
Sure.
For the moment, those are my questions. So please.
Any other questions from the commission?
Tony, currently, how do people get from Notre Dame, or how will people get from Notre Dame if they're walking or riding their bike to the bike path, the singing trails?
Well, I'm not sure if Notre Dame will have an access point or not, but I know the Singing Sands Trail runs along the railroad tracks right in front of Notre Dame, and there will be a crossing path right there at the railroad tracks. I'm not familiar with that engineering portion of it at this time.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I commend you on the green space. I think this looks great. And maybe this is a question more for the commission. But is there a minimum number of residential units which would require like a communal gathering space or playground? I'm assuming that the demographic of the people purchasing these homes would have children. And although there is a lot of green space, there's no designated play area or gathering space.
I think Skylar would be better maybe to answer that question. I don't think we're over the threshold where we need that.
Okay.
We were trying to keep HOA fees down by not having a gathering facility. So the intention of it was to keep HOA fees as low as possible with just the maintenance-free living.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the HOA, can you explain or comment on the need for the HOA in order to maintain, because there is as Attorney Novak mentioned, a private road, not a dedicated road, and other kinds of features that the HOA will need to maintain.
Sure. Well, and we haven't got that far into creating the covenants of the HOA yet, but we will make sure that we cover everything in all the covenants need to be covered as far as lighting pollution, roads, maintenance, stormwater maintenance, and everything else that needs to be taken care of. But we haven't written the document yet.
But that's the necessity for the HOAs to maintain all the private.
They'll maintain everything, the stormwater and the roads, correct?
Which is not.
We're asking for no public utilities or public roadways.
Then I would ask either you or Attorney Novak to comment on the phases, the tracks, because this discussion tonight is regarding the first phase or track. And if approved, then you still have to come back for the second phase with any approvals and development standards for that.
Correct. Yeah, the first track track 1 has a total of 16 townhomes. Our intention is to develop 8 townhomes, and the final 8 will be actually the last phase of the project. So when we come in after phase 2, we'll come in and backfill that because 6 of the units overlay where the church currently sits, and that church will serve as our construction offices and storage during that period of time. So the goal is either sometime in 2025, hopefully, could carry into 2026 and start construction on the first 8 units. As soon as those first 4 units of the 8 are sold, we will then move into phase 2, which we will develop. I believe, I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe it's 6 V1 villas at that point. And as soon as we have 3 of those sold, we'll move on to the next phase, which I believe is 7 V2 units. And as soon as those are sold, then we'll move back to the front and finish the final 8 units, which will be the 2 closest to Moore Road and US 12, and the 6 that overlay currently where the church sits.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay.
It's a great question.
Yes.
Follow up with.
Please, Attorney Hale.
I would just like to clarify that the PUD request is for the entire area, the 8-point-some acres that includes both track 1 and track 2. So as presented to us, that PUD request, the preliminary PUD site plan that is under your consideration this evening, will apply to the whole entire area. However, our ordinance permits the development of PUDs in phases. And that is what Mr. McCree and the petitioners have requested, that they are going to do this in phases. And so the primary plat that is also under consideration this evening after we get through with the PUD only refers to tract 1 and the townhomes. And so there are 2 things that I would point out about this process. One, the petitioner has to have approval for the PUD. And then once he has that and he has sizes of lots and all of that sort of thing granted through the PUD and the variances that he's asking for, he then has submitted a primary plat to subdivide it that will incorporate those sizes and those restrictions. He can't do it the other way around. And so what we're going to see tonight is a request for approval of that primary plat as it relates to these variances as contained in the PUD for tract 1 only. The whole process for PUD approval is a 2-step process. So the petitioner will have to come back to this body for approval of the final PUD site plan. And so there will be another consideration to ensure that the petitioner has done what he said. And he will have to come back for approval of a primary plat for track 2 again as well. And you will recall from our subdivision work that subdivisions, where a major subdivision requires a 2-step process as well. That is a primary plat and then a secondary plat. So he comes back twice for that. So it's a rather extensive process. This is the first part of it. And I believe I've stated all that correctly.
You did.
Thank you, Attorney Hale. Any follow-up questions from that?
Parking, guest parking. So I got 4 buddies coming to see me with 3 cars. How is that gonna be?
I think we have 10 spots provided on there for additional parking you see along the railroad tracks.
I probably just didn't read it carefully.
Okay, yeah, there's 10 additional parking
Oh, right there.
spots along the railroad tracks.
I'm just a lawyer. I can't read. Okay.
That's all right. And then each residence has a driveway also. They can either 2-car driveway or a 1-car driveway, depending on if it's a smaller townhome or a larger townhome.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, petitioner.
Just clarify, it looks like it's 7 parking spots, right?
I have heard.
On
but-
either, is that on either side of the mailboxes?
Yeah, she's gonna
Okay,
check on
just
that.
to clarify.
She did the planning.
I believe it's 8, 4 and 4 on each side of the mailboxes currently.
Okay, it's 8. I apologize.
Thank
It's
you.
8. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the dimension goes over one of the lines. That's why.
Okay, thank you, petitioner. Attorney Novak, any final comments, thoughts before we open up to public?
Nothing further from me, but I would like, if possible, either our engineer or Al Wallace from Burke to discuss the stormwater.
Okay. Please step up and state your name and.
Good evening, Commissioners. Al Wallace with Christopher Burke Engineering. We're a consulting engineer for the Sanitary District of Michigan City. One of the tasks we've been performing is reviewing stormwater drainage calculations. You should have 2 documents in front of you today. One is annotated version of a survey. It's about 4 pages or so. And the second document is a review letter on the development. First, I'd like to go through this annotated survey documents, the 4 or 5 pages, to provide a context of some of the things that we've looked at as part of our review of the design. So this first sheet is a survey of the existing property and annotated in red, orange, and yellow lines, contours. So if you look at the red line nearest the railroad tracks, that's elevation 624. It's hard to read, but that's why we put the red line there. A little bit to the north, there's an orange line. That's contour elevation 623. And then further north, there's a yellow contour line, elevation 622. So then the blue arrows annotated onto that sheet show where stormwater is flowing over land currently. So from nearest the railroad is the high spot on the property, and all rain that hits the property now overland flows to the north to the street. So sometimes looking at these plan views and surveys with contour lines could be a little confusing. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see a screenshot of a Google Earth map. Google Earth has an option where you can do elevation profiles. So if you look at the left-hand side of this page, the water surface elevation is elevation 608. And then as you progress from left to right, once you get to Lady Lane, the center of Lady Lane right there is elevation 610. So about 2 feet higher than the elevation in the water. As you progress further right across the page, you see on the graph in the bottom, the pink area gets larger and larger, so the land is gradually going upward higher. Once you get to the center of Birch Tree Lane, we're at elevation 617. So that's 11 feet higher than the water surface elevation. And then when we get to the subject property, nearest the tree line by the railroad tracks. That's elevation 624. So we're 16 feet higher. There's 16-foot elevation drop from the subject property all the way down to the water surface. And you can see any water that drops onto the subject property now, overland sheet flows directly to the north. So those are the current conditions. You can see from the photo that the existing property primarily has some trees, but a lot of grass, vegetation. There are some driveways, some buildings. So if a developer were to come in and change the land surface from grass to driveways, buildings, we now have impervious surface. So now there'll be more stormwater running off. So when we go to the next page, we have 2 pages of the stormwater drainage report submitted by BFA for this development. The stormwater requirements state that the developer has to provide pre-development watershed map and a post-construction watershed map. On the left-hand side, we see that pre-development watershed map. There's the 4 different colors: green, pink, orange, and red. If you look at the red shading on the right-hand side of that, that's the area we were looking at on the Google Earth map. So they've defined that watershed area is about 3 acres. So that's 3 acres of mainly track 1 that's proposed to be development. And then also the little blue area in the center of the whole PUD tract, there's another 0.8 acres. Both of those, the red and the blue, it's denoted in the pre-development watershed map that those drain off-site towards Lady Lane and to St. Andrews Village. So current conditions, we have about 3.8, just shy of 4 acres of land that is draining overland to the properties to the north. So those are the pre-development commissions, pre-development watershed conditions. In the drainage report on the right-hand side of this page, we have the proposed post-construction watershed map. If you look at the former red side on the far right-hand side, it's split up into 2 smaller basins. All the stormwater now that would hit that developed property would be contained and routed to one of 2 basins. So that initial 3.0 acres that was draining offsite to the north is now primarily captured and retained on site. And similarly, the blue area, the 0.8 acres that was drained into St. Andrews Village, would then be captured as part of the track 2 development and routed to one of 2 basins in that area. So this was included in the stormwater drainage plan submitted by the developer, the required pre-development watershed map and post-construction, identifying that there'll be a reduction of water leaving that site to the properties to the north. And if you go to the next page, you'll see a screenshot of the sanitary district GIS system. As you drive around the community, you may see many detention basins around towns at different developments. Many times there's stormwater infrastructure adjacent to those other ponds in town. In that case, the design engineer would have a controlled release tie-in to an existing stormwater system. However, when you look at this map here, the sanitary district GIS map in the area north of the area to be developed, all the green lines are sanitary sewers and sanitary manholes. All the blue lines that you see, just one, a tiny one, that represents a storm component. There's a little bit of an inlet at the end, the north end of the driveway alley between the structures there. And then the only other stormwater infrastructure is near the intersection of Clemens and Lady Lane, a couple of inlets there. So when the developer stormwater engineers recognize there's a lack of city stormwater structures here, then their option for dealing with stormwater runoff, the additional runoff from impervious surface, was decided to be handled through retaining all the water on site and infiltrating into the ground. And then that gets us to the next page. Copy of the track 1 drainage plan. In the drainage plan here, you'll see 2 kind of oblong shaped objects with lines, contour lines right next to them. So to the right-hand side of the page is basin 1.1. So all the runoff from the eastern part of the development will be routed into that infiltration basin on the east side. The downspouts from the buildings will be collected in header pipes, deposited into storm sewer and routed into those infiltration basins as well. And then as you move further west, there's a larger basin, 1.2, that captures runoff from the roadways. Again, more building downspouts and then runoff from the development itself. When we reviewed the initial submittal on this plan, these basins are designed per the city code to handle a certain required storage volume for a design storm, and that's detailed in the regulations. And then typically for infiltration basins, we'll want to address what happens when you get a storm over and above the design storm. So then that water should have a place to go. Again, typically we would have emergency overflow routes into city storm infrastructure. We don't have any here, so we asked the stormwater engineers at BFA to, at some point, we need to expand those basins. We're recommending by 50%, consistent with the LaPorte County infiltration basin design, to handle emergency bypasses on site as well. So during emergency conditions, we want to capture that additional water and not send that to the north. And then the last page of the handout, this handout is a checklist. It's a double-sided checklist. So this is documenting all the requirements in the Michigan City Code that have to be submitted for stormwater application. The stormwater engineers filled this out. All the check marks represent items that have already been submitted to the city, the sanitary district, and reviewed. The items that say CD reference construction documents. If the project were to move forward, there's several steps the developer would have to go through: apply for building permits, improvement location permits, stormwater pollution prevention plan review, an item construction stormwater general permit. And these documents, the CDs, everything identified with the CD represents data and drawings that would be supplied prior to construction, so they can be reviewed by the city and the sanitary district to ensure they're meeting all the stormwater regulations of the city. So that's a little bit of background of what we reviewed, and then we have the official recommendation letter, review letter that we provided to Skylar. And just going over a couple of things real quick. Items 1 and 2 are carryovers from our first review. Item 1 talked about underlying soil types. At the point of the first review, we did not have the geotech report. We had since received that report. And within the geotech report that was done in May of this year, the conclusion is of the geotech engineers that the soils above the groundwater level on this site are suitable for infiltration drainage. So since there is no nearby city stormwater infrastructure, the option of using infiltration is confirmed to be a viable option by the geotech report. The second item talked about the design methods for the infiltration basin. We asked BFA to look at the state of Indiana checklist and the Oakwood Office Community Rural Affairs Green Infrastructure Manual for the state. And they confirmed that the soil infiltration testing protocols were followed according to the state manual. And in fact, the soil infiltration data from the testing, those numbers were cut in half by 50% to be conservative, which resulted in slightly larger basins that would have been needed if they used the full infiltration numbers. And then 3 is kind of the critical point that we raised to the developers, stormwater engineers. In the original report, they talked about the basins have an emergency bypass for when the stormwater exceeds its capacity. And at that point, emergency bypasses are sized for the peak 100-year flow rate and outlet to Birch Tree Lane and Moore Road right-of-way. The city took issue with that, again, because there's no stormwater infrastructure on those streets. And we noted there's a lack of specificity at that point of what's going to happen with the emergency bypasses. So since then, we've had meetings with the design engineers, talked about the need to increase the capacity of the basins 1.1 and 1.2. And then on the top of page 2, We identified 3 different methods to use to redesign those basins. One, we could follow the LaPorte County criteria, 150% volume based on a 100-year 24-hour storm. For this particular location, the 2-hour storm is more critical than the 100-year storm. So we want them to also look at accommodating 150% of the volume for the peak design storm to make sure we have the worst condition covered. And then thirdly, a catch-all statement that if none of the first 2 result in a mutually agreeable solution to protect the area to the north, we need to come up with the right sizing in a manner that does not negatively impact the down gradient, public rights of way, and private property. So we had those discussions, and the stormwater engineers are agreeable to upsizing the basins to 150%. And those calculations will be submitted as if the project moves forward and gets closer to the construction phase. And then lastly, item 4, we reminded the stormwater engineers that the items they noted with CD as construction documents, they have to be submitted to the city when they get to that point, have to be reviewed by the sanitary district and approved. So our final summary recommendation says that the stormwater drain, from a drainage perspective, that we have no objection to recommending approval of Track 1 drainage plan contingent upon the following. Track 1 basin 1.1, 1.2 are to be over-designed to accommodate the additional flow as described in the memo. And then all proposed basin oversizing design calculations have to be submitted to and subsequently reviewed, approved by the sanitary district stormwater engineer.
Thank you for your report. Any questions from the commissioners?
Yes, I have a couple questions. You said that the 2-hour storm is more relevant than the 100-year storm.
Yes, so for a 100-year 24-hour storm, we have a more gradual rainfall over that 24-hour period. During a 2-year storm, we have a more intense rainfall. So on this particular site, the more intense rainfall results in a greater volume of water that would go into those basins.
Okay.
So we actually have the city code says the design engineer has to look at a whole range of storms to make sure we capture the worst storm, to make sure we're handling stormwater in the right way.
And about when was the last time we had a 2-hour storm?
It happens quite frequently. I don't have off the top of my head when the last one happened,
but happening more frequently?
We have seen evidence that rainfall data is changing. We're also currently reviewing the current Michigan City Stormwater Ordinance, and we're updating rainfall data to incorporate the latest information from USGS and other federal agencies. So we'll be modifying in the future Michigan City rainfall data.
Okay, one more question. And this is just because the plans are really tiny and I can't read some of these numbers. But just to get a sense of the depth of these basins, from grade level to the bottom of the basin is about how many feet and change in elevation?
Basin 1 is about 2 feet deep. Basin 1.1 is about 2 feet deep. 1.2 is about 4 feet deep. There were soil borings done on site to groundwater, and Track 1 is between 7 and 9 feet deep. So from the bottom of the infiltration basins to existing groundwater at the time of the borings would be around at least 4 feet, 4 to 6 feet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the commissioners regarding the stormwater reports? Thank you very much. Attorney Novak, any other presentation from engineers or others?
Nothing further. I would say, Darla, anything that you can think of.
Okay.
Wayne, is anything outside of what Al said, do you think needs mentioned, or? No.
I'll just weigh in on the stormwater or the rainwater question. Basically, the design storm, the worst case scenario for our basins, at least for the front 2 basins, is it's a 2-hour 100-year storm. And basically that's almost 4 inches of rain in that 2 hour period. I do not recall the last time I even saw 4 inches over a 24-hour period in LaPorte County. We do erosion control projects, monitoring for some projects, and I don't remember a 4-inch storm in a 24-hour period, let alone a 2-hour period. But yeah, so that is our maximum storm for the stormwater basins is a 4-inch rain event in 2 hours. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Any other commission comments, questions? We'll move on to staff report. At the last meeting, we were informed that not all the data was available. The staff report was not available to be finalized or prepared. So our planning director, Mr. York, has prepared the staff report for tonight's meeting. And as he'll explain, there's a lot of detail here, but we're going to present that for a thorough presentation and including in the record here. But I'll just highlight that there are a number of requirements that the PUD requires. And there's qualifying conditions for the PUD. There's land development plan conditions, the beneficial effect of the overall development there. Lot sizes, we've already touched on that. Density requirements, parking issues, and access issues, vehicular that we've addressed, landscaping, overall development, preserving the nature and natural significance there, water sewer facilities, open space requirements, proposed deviations from the standards, which Attorney Novak explained, purpose of the PUD, and the overall PUD results in buffering from adjacent land uses. So there's 14 different items. So I will ask Planning Director, Mr. York, to review that and read through that. It's several pages, so please bear with us, but we want to make sure we thoroughly address these issues here. Go ahead, Mr. York.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mr. President. Can everyone hear me okay? Dan, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So let me start off by, let me read my staff report. How I'm going to do this, I'm going to read my staff report, and then I'm going to read comments from our respective departments and the regulatory agencies if they return something to me. We do have some remonstrance letters that I need to read as well. And then that's kind of what I would like to do right now, okay? Well, let me start off with saying, before I get to my staff report, that I have no issues with the overlay, what's being requested of the sidewalk, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons we closed down at the request of the city engineer and myself, we wanted to close down the existing entrance to the church for two reasons. One was a safety upgrade. We want things to come off a birch tree. But secondly, the reason why we don't want a sidewalk there is because the trail is actually going to curve right there and actually become basically the sidewalk in front of this development. It will be accessible from that location. You will get on it at Birch Tree if you so choose. Now, I will go across the road and keep going, but if you were to ride a bike and to corner Birch Tree and more, you would be able to get on this trail and theoretically go to New Buffalo or Chicago. So that's why we don't want to put a sidewalk there, in that it will become a trail and it will probably become part of the easement for that trail. Ms. Tieta, you asked about a park. As part of the PUD, they're not required to do the park. But that being said, the reason for PUD, which I'll get into in my report, is that a PUD creates the purpose of a PUD is to really create something that is outside the norm. If you look at some of our PUDs that we have in town, they're used to preserve land or create spaces that are both active and passive in nature. This one is one where you have an example of both. You're going to have an active space, which is the Seeing Sands Trail. And you're going to have passive spaces that you can go sit in and watch birds if you so choose, or just relax outside. Those would be the common open spaces, or the trees, the treed lawns, or preserved trees, things of that nature. So in the future, if I think if the HOA decided to put in a play system or something of that nature, I don't know that that would go against what we're trying to create with respect to conservation easements and things of that nature. Those can always be adjusted and things of that nature. We do have a process for making minor amendments to things, and actually adjustments to conservation easements are minor amendments. That being said, let me get into my report. First of all, I'd like to correct my date on my report. There are a couple of things I need to correct. Sorry, I wrote this on the 18th. It is actually the 22nd today. And then it is not 44 units. That was the old plan. There are actually only 40 units, so bear with me. This is the Michigan City Plan Commission, October 22nd, 2024, case number 903-23-1, the Moore PUD Pyramid Properties request. The petitioner is requesting a new PUD to develop 40 new dwellings. Staff analysis. According to the zoning ordinance, the plan unit development overlay PUD is a tool permitted and regulated by Indiana code with standards intended to accommodate, among other factors, development on sites with significant natural features to provide the opportunity to preserve common open space and natural features. The ordinance further states that the standards shall not be sought primarily to avoid the imposition of standards and requirements of other zoning classifications. In order to encourage PUD developments on specific properties, the Plan Commission and City Council may relax or waive one or more of the requirements of the underlying zoning district through the approval of a PUD overlay district ordinance. The property in question is currently a former church and large associated parking lot. The underlying zoning is R2A multifamily zoning district. The land immediately to the north is R2B multifamily residential zoning. The land in question has never been formally subdivided, and no record has been found of a previous subdivision. Developer is proposing a two-phase subdivision and a development plan consisting of attached 16 townhomes in Tract 1 and duplexes in Tract 2, Phase 2. According to Section 25.08 of our zoning ordinance, based upon the following standards, the Plan Commission may deny, approve, or approve with conditions the proposed preliminary PUD site plan, subject to approval of the PUD ordinance by the legislative body. Planning Department makes the following findings in accordance with Section 28.08. Number one, the proposed PUD meets the qualifying conditions of Section 25.02. A, demonstrated benefit. So in order to approve a PUD, first and foremost, there has to be a demonstrated benefit, and you have to meet one or all of these. The proposed PUD provides for the following benefits not possible under the requirements of other zoning districts. And I'm going to read them to you. 1, preservation of significant natural features or farmland. 2, I would say that number 1, they are preserving trees. I didn't answer that one, but they are preserving some trees. I would say that we're not preserving farmland, and I'm not sure that there's too many natural features here. It's relatively flat. There's not a dune. There's not a wooded dune or something like that. But number 2, a complementary mix of use or a variety of housing types that provides a benefit to the community over conventional development. The underlying zoning allows 8 units per acre. So if you did the math, 8 units, that's 64 units that could be presented here or proposed here. Now that's just a potential for development. There are other things you have to consider, roads, things of that nature, but at its base, 64 units. And the petitioner is proposing 40 units, which is a significant reduction of density on the site. And the units will be a mixture of townhome and duplexes, which complements what is currently surrounding the property. Common open space or passive and active recreation use. The petitioner is providing both passive and active recreation on site. Open areas provide places to gather, while the Singing Sands Trail provides opportunity for active. Number 4, off-site mitigation and community impacts resulting from the development, such as public roadway improvements to maintain or improve roadway level of service. The petitioners agreed to close the original entrance from Moore Road for the church at the request of the city engineer and provide access from Birch Tree. This is a significant improvement to the intersection of Moore Road and Birch Tree. Number 5, redevelopment of an outdated urban site or brownfield site where creative design can address unique site constraints. This site was developed as a church in the 1960s. This PUD will reduce allowable density and create a unique neighborhood and also create 40 new taxable residential units. Now on to B. That was A. Now we're on B. Or that was 1A. Now we're on 1B. Availability and capacity of public services. The proposed type and density of uses shall not result in an unreasonable increase in the use of public services, public facilities, and utility capacities. The proposal as presented has been reviewed by the MS4 consulting engineers for the city, and the city consulting engineers have worked with the petitioner's engineers for a solution for stormwater detention that will not adversely affect surrounding properties. Other utility capacities are adequate to handle the proposed development. They've met with both water and sanitary department, and those are adequate at this time to meet the demand. C, compatibility with the county land development plan. Proposed PUD shall be compatible with the overall goals and recommendations as proposed in the county or city-county land development plan. This land is zoned for multifamily development and proposed for the same in the comprehensive plan and the county land use plan. D, compatibility with the PUD purpose. The proposed PUD shall be consistent with the intent of this article and the spirit of the ordinance. This proposal is keeping with the intent of the article and the ordinance. In fact, it is an example of how a residential PUD should be used. E, development impact. The proposed PUD shall not impede the continued use or development of surrounding properties for use that are permitted in the ordinance. Once the stormwater is engineered to meet the specific requirement by the sanitary district, the PUD will not impede the continued use and development of the surrounding properties. And I would add that what you heard tonight is that it will actually reduce the amount of stormwater that is coming off at current capacity or at current rates. Number 2, the PUD must be consistent with the county land development plan. The proposed PUD amendment, the proposed PUD is currently exceeding 25% conservation required as at 30% of the land, as 30% of the land will be used for open space and conservation easements. The proposed use is compatible with the overall goals of the residential use as proposed in Michigan City Comprehensive Plan and the County Land Use Development Plan. Number 3, the uses must have a beneficial effect in terms of public health, safety, welfare, or convenience on present and future potential surrounding land uses. The uses proposed must not adversely affect the public utility and circulation system, surrounding properties, or the environment. The public benefit shall be one which could not be achieved under the regulations of the underlying district alone or that of any other zoning district. The underlying zoning of this parcel is R2A, multifamily residential district. This district allows duplexes, townhomes, and apartments at a density of 8 per acre. The parcel has the potential for a maximum density of 68 units, but the developer is proposing 40 units, which is a significantly reduced footprint on the property. This will reduce congestion in the area and reduce demand on the utility capacity. Number 4, any modifications to the dimensional standards of this ordinance, such as lot sizes, setbacks, height limits, required facilities, buffers, open space, permitted sign area, and other similar dimensional standards shall be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. You heard that Mr. Novak was asking for 13, I believe it's 13 deviations. I think he did a thorough job of asking for those tonight. And to be honest, I think that they're minor deviations and they're good deviations to achieve what is being proposed, because the alternative would be much more dense than and much more I would say invasive to this area without asking for these allowances. The modifications have been provided in the PUD documents and are acceptable to the planning department based on the comparison with the required standards. Number 5, any increase in the density requirements of the underlying zoning district must be approved by the Planning Commission and be included under review of the preliminary PUD site plan and in the PUD ordinance. At this time, the developer is not proposing any increases in density and is actually proposing a decrease from the allowable density. And I'll be really honest, it's something that we don't see often. Typically, people are trying to increase density with PUDs. Number 6, the number and dimensions of off-street parking shall be sufficient to meet the minimum required by Article 18. However, where warranted by overlapping and shared parking arrangements, the Planning Commission may reduce the required parking spaces in the PUD ordinance. At this time, the developer hasn't requested any special considerations for parking or off-street parking, so he's not requested any deviation from a parking standard. 7, all roads and parking areas within the PUD shall meet the minimum design standards unless modified by the Planning Commission and legislative body in the PUD ordinance. The access roads in the development will be private drives, and remain private and cared for by the HOA for the development, which you heard Mr. McCree speak about. That will be a part of the HOA documents. Number 8, safe, convenient, uncongested, and well-defined vehicular and pedestrian circulation within and to the site shall be provided. The access drives, as laid out currently, provide adequate circulation around the development, and the developer has agreed to close the original access for the church from Moore Road and access the site from Birch Tree, which is a safer access plan for the development. This was at the request of the city engineer for safety concerns on Moore Road. Number 9, landscaping shall be preserved or provided to ensure that proposed uses will be adequately buffered from one another and from surrounding public and private property. Plantings and other landscaping features shall meet or exceed the standards of Article 17. The proposed landscaping plan and preservation of existing trees meets the intent of Article 17 at this time and will be reviewed again at the time when the application for permits is made to ensure that the landscaping standards are met. I might add, he hasn't requested any variations or deviations from Article 17. Number 10, judicious effort shall be used to preserve significant natural, historical, or architectural features and the integrity of the land. The developer is trying to conserve what trees they can in order to accommodate the development, as well as lay out additional land for conservation. 11, adequate water and sewer facilities shall be available or shall be provided by the developer as part of the site development. The developer has already had significant conversations with each utility. The sanitary district has reviewed the stormwater plan and provided a recommendation to the developer that will protect the surrounding area from stormwater runoff by capturing and retaining the stormwater on site for the Tract 1 Phase 1. Number 12, the proposed PUD meets the open space requirements of Section 25.05 of our zoning ordinance. The developer site plan provides for 33.3% of Tract 1 area to be open and subject to conservation easement. The developer site plan for 29.7% of Tract 2 area will be open and subject to conservation easements. See open space plan, part of the developer's submitted documentation for the calculation of open space and drawing the layout. The conservation easement submitted by the developer will, when recorded, adequately provide for the protection and maintenance of the open space. And both the HOA document and the conservation easements are a required recorded document. So both of them have to be recorded. Number 13, the proposed deviation from the development standards set out in zoning ordinance as the developer had identified them in Exhibit 7 of the developer's submitted documentation are reasonable, consistent with the PUD development, and will not adversely affect the community or immediate neighborhood. Reduction of lot size and width and front and rear setbacks are necessary to maximize open space. Reductions in right-of-way and pavement widths and the requested change to cul-de-sac standards have been reviewed and approved by the city departments and will not present health or safety risks. Other requested changes are consistent with similar developments and provide needed directional information. Number 14, overall, the proposed PUD results in enhanced buffering from adjacent land uses, the adjacent railroad, the public right-of-way, the creation of a workable neighborhood, in a higher quality development than possible without a PUD, and reduces density and adds open space, or I would say preserves open space. So here's the staff recommendation. The Planning Commission has reviewed the proposed preliminary PUD site plan and the PUD overlay district and recommends that the Planning Commission forward this proposal, the proposed preliminary PUD site plan and proposed PUD overlay ordinance to the City Council with a favorable recommendation subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the petitioner must provide the city MS4 coordinator / reviewer an updated basin design for the track 1 prior to final PUD approval and secondary plat approval. The plan will be reviewed again at the time of permitting. I would also say they also have to provide the plan to be reviewed at the time of permitting as well to assure confirmation with the review provided by Burke Engineering. So they have to provide it prior to final PUD approval, but also it should be submitted along with the permits to make sure that it's still in conformance. Does that make sense? Number 2, track 2 stormwater plan and design will be reviewed and approved at the time of primary plat to assure that adequate detention and stormwater is provided. Basically, my intent of that is that they still have to come back. Keep in mind that track 2, phase 2 is not being submitted for a subdivision. It will have to come back for a subdivision, and at that time, we will need to reevaluate the stormwater and assure that it's being captured correctly. Number 3, prior to any sale or offer to sell any units in track 1 or track 2, the conservation easement shall be recorded in its current form and submitted, or with any changes approved by the enforcement officer. Number 4, a basin maintenance agreement shall be added to the proposed commitments, restrictions, and covenants submitted by the petitioners to the Planning Commission as Exhibit 8 to petitioner's preliminary PUD site plan. And said document as amended shall be made a part of the preliminary PUD site plan and forwarded to the Michigan City Common Council. The intent of this is that the basins need to be maintained. With water running into them, they carry things with them and they should be maintained. So with this, we want to make sure and ensure that those basins are maintained and taken care of. With that, that concludes my report. I'll answer any questions. And then I'll move into other department reports and remonstration letters.
Any comments or questions from the commissioners to Mr. York's report? Very thorough and detailed. Appreciate that. A lot of work and preparation. So, I see no other comments or questions. So, Mr. York, you have other staff reports?
Yeah, let me read. Let me read from other departments. At this time, Jeff Bruder. So I will say that we reviewed this through development review. I want to say March, maybe. We reviewed this through development review. We've been working on this project for quite a while and reviewing iterations of it and talking about layout and street design, cul-de-sac design, preservation, things of that nature. So this isn't I would just say it's a pretty well thought out version that you're seeing right now. This was reviewed by our fire department, and Jeff Bruder, our fire marshal, took the time to comment, and he basically said he has no issues with what's being presented. He reviewed the cul-de-sac design, talked about what if they were to come in there, they're going to come in there with a truck that fits. They're not going to come in there with this large vehicle. They're pretty good about that. So he said that he has no comments or issues at this time. We did receive back a comment from one of our consulting agencies, which is the USDA, John Allen, and basically he said we're not affecting farmland, so he has no comments. I did hear back from the water department, and they have no comments as well. There's capacity at this location. And then I do believe they have been working with the sanitary district, and at this time they take no exception to what's being presented at this time. Let me go into the other. Are there any questions about any of those?
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, continue.
1 second, I'm sorry. Sure. Misplaced my letters here, sorry. There they are. Okay. I'll start with the first letter that I have received in writing. This is from Notre Dame. I can't read the exact title of it. I think it's The School Next Door. It's Reverend Keith J. McLennan. Michigan City Planning Commission, this was dated September 20th, 2024. Remonstration against petition 903-24-1 and petition 903-24-2. Dear Planning Commission members, the Notre Dame Parish Pastoral Council has serious concerns over the existing hazardous traffic conditions at the intersection of Moore Road and US Highway 12. There's a strong belief that any further changes to the intersection, such as the proposed residential development by Pyramid Properties, will make conditions worse. We urge this commission to take into consideration the already approved extension of the city. We urge this commission to take into consideration the already approved extension of the Singing Sands Trail that crosses at this intersection. The Pastoral Council believes and supports a request that a safety risk assessment and traffic impact study be carried out by either the developer or city prior to preliminary or final plat approval is granted. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Yours sincerely, Reverend Keith J. McLennan, and the Pastoral Council members, Dave Albers, Charlie Kate, Judy Langley, Anthony Leninsky, Brian McKee, Dan Radke, Mary Campbell, Brian Coleman, Brandy Lee, Natasha Magnuson, and Doug Novorowski. August 21st, 2024, to the Michigan City Planning Commission regarding proposed housing development, location Moore Road and US Highway 12. Dear Commission members, my name is Tom Dolezal. I have lived in Michigan City all my life. I have 3 things which I feel need to be discussed about the new housing development. We need to review water runoff from those 14 buildings. I live in Long Beach Point Condo. We have a sump pit and pumps in all our buildings. These operate in heavy rain. The site is 6 feet higher than our building. Birch Tree Lane floods in heavy rains, and water flows north through the driveway between our garages. This flows to Lake Claire. is there a stormwater plan for this project? Homes on Lady Lane may be affected. Number 2, traffic flow will be a large problem. Notre Dame school parents drop off students at 8 a.m. and pick up at 3 p.m. with approximately 80 cars each time. Long Beach Point has 74 units. St. Andrews development, over 40 homes. Moore Road is one of 3 out of Long Beach with lots of traffic during the summer. The developer wants to tie into Birch Tree Lane to get out of Moore Road, or get out to Moore Road. Sorry, Birch Tree Lane is a 2-lane road with parking on both sides. Moore Road is crossed by high-speed 80-mile-an-hour Amtrak and freight lines. Getting out onto Highway 12 is very scary right now. Turning left is very scary. As a traffic study to be done. Number 3, we need open discussion with the developer about the project. Will a fence be installed like Kimball Woods to keep kids off the railroad tracks? Do buyers really want to be 20 feet away from a high-speed train? Sincerely, Thomas Dolezal, 510 Birch Tree Lane, Michigan City, Indiana, 46360. The next one is from Long Beach Point Condominium Association, 205 Birch Tree Lane, Michigan City, Indiana, 46360. August 21st, 2024, Plan Commission, Michigan City, Indiana, regarding the Moore development, to whom it may concern. Please be advised that a number of our residents have not received a certified letter announcing the Plan Commission meeting on August 27th. How can we respond to this meeting when not informed? I represent the Long Beach Point Condominium Association as president. The residents of our community have many concerns with this project and have not had a chance to be heard. I have been contacted by Brian Coleman of St. Andrews Village with the same concerns as ours. These concerns are stormwater management, traffic impact on Moore Road, Highway 12, as well as Birch Tree Lane and Clemens. Parking on Birch Tree Lane and Clemens essential to our community. Short-term rentals among our quiet communities, tree conservation. I feel we have not had any consideration with the impact of this development and wish the city to listen to our valid concerns. Very truly yours, Long Beach Point Condominium Association, Kathleen Shields, president. St. Andrews Village Townhomes Condominium Association, Inc., August 16th, 2024. This was addressed to the mayor and myself regarding the proposed development of the Moore, Route 12, and Moore Road. Dear Mayor Deitch and Mr. York, this letter is sent on behalf of the residents of St. Andrews Village, SAV, which is located directly adjacent to the property proposed to be developed as the Moore, a 40-unit multi-family residential development. Our residents received notice this week of the proposed development and are eager to learn more about what is proposed. We asked the developer to meet with our residents prior to the upcoming August 28th Plan Commission hearing to provide SAV with the opportunity to be informed about the development and allow questions to be answered. The developer refused to meet with SAV despite our properties being the most impacted by the proposal. Given the close proximity to the development, a number of legitimate questions exist which require consideration. These issues include stormwater retention, tree preservation, and proposed short-term rental use of a portion of the property, and traffic, parking. SAV has not yet taken a position on the proposed development, but waits to learn more about these key issues, which could have a major impact on SAV's livability and property values. Basic due diligence is required, particularly on stormwater and site planning issues, in order for SAV to provide needed constructive input to the public deliberations. Please be aware that representatives of SAV intend to attend the August 27th Plan Commission hearing to request an extension of the hearing process to allow adequate time for the needed due diligence to occur. We request your support for the SAV's request for an extension and the opportunity to meet with your team to directly discuss our issues of concern. Thank you in advance for consideration of this request. It is greatly appreciated. Sincerely, Lisa M. Albers, Secretary, on behalf of Bruce Ebel, President of the St. Andrews Village. I'm sorry, President of the Board of St. Andrews Village. And that's all that I have with me.
Thank you, Mr. York.
And just
Do you have any questions or comments from the commissioners on any of the staff report, the department reports, or any of the letters or remonstrant letters?
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes. Yes.
Miss Collins, Dr. Collins, have you received anything more?
no.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, so let's move on. Attorney Hale, you have a report and comments and explanations.
Yes, sir. Ms. Collins would like to address the commission.
Okay.
I would like to just state that you please pay attention to the dates in which the letters were written, as some of the things were addressed today before you asked questions in reference to letters that were dated before the issues were resolved. Thank you.
Yes, some of those letters were a month or 2 months ago. We've had a couple of hearings, had some continuances. The parties have met and we've addressed some of those issues here tonight. Okay, Attorney Hale.
Yes, sir. My attorney report for petition number 903-24, /1, the applicant owners Pyramid Properties, Inc., and the request currently in front of you at this time is for preliminary PUD site plan approval. Although PUDs are relatively rare in Michigan City, if you think about a PUD as an additional overlay zoning district, you'll get the notion that it's something that we are familiar with, this commission. That is a change in zoning. And that will lead you to understand my next comment. This body, the Plan Commission, does not give final approval to the preliminary PUD site plan. That approval is to be handled and approved by the Common Council. Our duty tonight is to consider the various standards and qualifications, which I'll briefly touch on. And then we have the option of sending this on to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation, with an unfavorable recommendation. So we are not the decider. This is, like most zoning regulations, must be passed by the Common Council. And as I indicated earlier, it also comes back to this body for review and consideration as final PUD site plan approval. So having said that, I would just point out that in the documents that I left at your place this evening, I had a copy of 3 sections of our zoning ordinance, section 25.02, which is the criteria that have to be met in order to qualify for PUD approval. Section 25.05 that has the open space requirement that has been discussed, and section 25.08 of our zoning ordinance, which has the standards that you are to consider in determining if you will pass this on to the Common Council with a favorable or an unfavorable recommendation. And as always, I have included in my report, which you have in front of you, the materials that form part of the record. They're listed there, but I wanted to make a point of adding to that list and including as part of the record the revised open space document that was submitted by Mr. Novak that I've handed out to you, and the 2 documents that were submitted by Al Wallace as part of his contracted engineers report on water detention. they are also added as part of the record. I believe that the remonstrators may have additional documents or that they would like you to consider. And if that happens, they will also be a part of the record tonight and part of what you should be considering. I would like the opportunity to discuss further this matter upon your consideration of a vote.
Any questions from the commissioners? Okay.
Yes, in general, I guess I want to ask Mr. Warner, our city engineer, if he agrees with the stormwater presentation that was provided. You've been involved in that termination?
Yeah, Al Wallace with Chris Burke and I have gone over the information that he had with the Barton Fitch engineers as well, and I concur with what Mr. Wallace had to discuss.
Thank you. Been on the planning commission for a number of years. This is the most intense study that I've ever heard. The engineer having to go through to be involved in all of the ramifications of this, and I think they've done a very good job in evaluating all those variables. I assume, and I'm hoping that what we're doing is when we take a look at this, that we evaluate exactly what he came up with and what we feel the city of Michigan City needs. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments, questions? Attorney Hale, you have submitted a conservation easement. Is that something you want to address now or a little later?
Yes, in your determination as to what position you're going to take and how you're going to vote on this matter, one of the things that was submitted as part of the petitioner's package of documentation was a conservation easement. I just wanted you to know that I had made significant revisions to that, primarily to make sure that if there is a conservation easement that is going to be recorded, and that's determined by the vote and approval, that it would be one that would protect this open space and keep it safe for perpetuity. So I just wanted you to know that we have looked at that as well.
And with regard to the conservation easement, of course, it's subject to the establishment of the homeowners association that will sign it and to the legal description that will be developed, as Attorney Novak explained previously. So this is kind of the draft form subject to those couple of things to finalize it at that point. Attorney Hale, do you have any other thoughts or comments at this time?
Not at this time.
Any other final comments or questions from the commissioners? Okay, then we'll open up the public hearing for any comments from the public. The public hearing is open for those present in person. Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address or position. And if anybody's online, we'll address those comments as well. And as I remember, please be sure to state your questions and information to the commission here and explain your thoughts and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my name is Robert Schwerd. I'm an attorney with offices at 825 Lincoln Way, Valparaiso. Those of you that were here at the last meeting may recall that I tried to make it as clear as possible that my clients, the St. Andrews Village Association, are not opposed to the development of the land. That's a good thing. Tax base is good for everybody. It's good for the city. It's good for the citizens. So we're not opposing that. We've limited our concerns to stormwater. And I was hoping I wouldn't be here tonight. I had requested that our engineer meet with the city engineers, with anyone from the city that wanted to participate and have a give and take, and maybe all the questions would have been answered. But our request for a meeting was refused. I'm very confused by the lack of clarity, transparency. Christopher Burke read in detail from a report, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs. I had requested the report, but we didn't get it. We never got any staff reports. It's interesting, if I can pull it up quick, and I'm not going to go through it in detail, but from September 13th to October 22nd, we made 11 different requests for information. Some were under the Access Information APRA requests. Mine were ignored. They haven't been, even by law, they have to respond in 5 days. All we want is an opportunity to have our expert look at what the other experts are saying. And we want an opportunity to do that. At the last meeting, when the petition was verbally withdrawn, I was concerned, like, what do we do? Do we sit back and be quiet? And then we discussed it, and I said, we have to go forward. We have to get the information. We have to assume he's going to go forward. All the answers may have been solved with a meeting. What I've included is our expert, and you'll see in blue line, and I know you can't read this 18-page report, but we didn't have the information, some of it, until a day or two ago. So in a nutshell, that 18 pages says that not all PUD site requirements have been made. Not all the information required by the stormwater has been provided. So there's a certain amount of analysis that has to be made based on information that has not been provided. So I hate to say it, I truly do. I'm asking for a continuance so that we can at least review the documents we've been requesting. It's just all about transparency. And I don't think that my clients are asking for anything that's unreasonable. The law says we have a right to remonstrate against this, but then our hands are tied. We're handcuffed because we don't have the information. So do we really have an opportunity for an honest, straightforward remonstration? I don't think so. If the Plan Commission is set on making a decision and giving preliminary approval, which has me concerned, just because once a decision's made, the final decision, this development's going to be there for 100, 200 years. So we shouldn't rush to say, okay, you can start, we'll approve preliminary and go on to the next. But if you do, I'm asking for language, and I've spelled it out, short paragraph, to put in any motion for preliminary approval of the site plan to provide, you can read it, you're all capable of reading it. I hate it when someone reads everything, but the gist is we want all the information at least 10 days before there's any final decision so that we can review it and have a true, honest, if necessary, remonstrance. We may not show up. It may not be necessary. But I'm asking, I mentioned last time, I represented Plan Commission, two of them, if you add them together, I'm getting old, 70 years between the two. I've never seen a case where the city engineer would not, and sometimes it's the contract engineer, sometimes both, would not meet with an engineer for a remonstrator. I've just never, ever come across that. Please consider what I said before you make your decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the public in person here?
Hello, my name is Bridget O'Keefe. I live at 9 Muirfield Drive in St. Andrews. I'm here tonight. I was here last week. We're here with a number of our residents from St. Andrews. If they could raise their hands to show they've come out because they want to express, and I want to reiterate and support everything our attorney said. We do not oppose this development. We think this development could be a really good thing for the community. But if you recall from the letter that Mr. York read from August that we sent in, it said, we're not taking a position on this project. We just want to do our basic due diligence. That's it. That's what we've asked for. So, our attorney's a nicer person than I am because I did the chronology that showed from September 13th till October 22nd how many times we asked for the stormwater information, and I was a little frustrated tonight to hear about watershed surveys and the 6-page survey documents because we asked for that watershed information on September 13th, September 16th. We filed this information request, formal per the law, the Indiana laws, and we never received it. We asked for the Burke report, and they sent us the 4 pages, but we never saw the surveys that were referenced tonight that he was going through by page by page. We've never seen those. So, we're trying to do be fiduciaries for our residents, right? To make sure that they feel comfortable that this isn't going to have an adverse impact on them. But it's hard for us to act as these fiduciaries if we're not provided the information to give them the assurances that they want. So as we said, we're not trying to delay this. We just are asking for the information that we feel we should be provided. And, in your code, you provide that for preliminary site plan approval. I know that your attorney said that you have a record and you have to provide evidence to show that every standard has been met to be granted this preliminary approval of the plan development. And our evidence that we're submitting to the record was a letter from our engineer that shows that the information that's required by code in order to get a preliminary approval has not been provided. And so we outlined the areas section by section in the code showing what additional information is needed with regards to the stormwater. Now, we want to thank the staff for these conditions that they've suggested and the efforts they've gone to try to really study the stormwater issue. We really do appreciate the opportunities to potentially expand the basins and to have further studies done on the final plans. But we just feel before a final vote's taken, we should have the opportunity to have our questions answered that we've been asking for on 11 different occasions. And as we said, they haven't been provided, even though it's required by Indiana law. So we would ask you to consider this and understand our frustration is not directed at opposition to the project. It's just really asking for your help to make sure that we can all feel comfortable with it. So if I can say one other thing, I'd like to ask Mrs. Schreiber to come up. Mrs. Schreiber lives at 19 Royal Troon. She is a member of St. Andrews Village, and she's asked me to speak because she doesn't like speaking in public. But Mrs. Schreiber and her husband, they back up on where this new track 2 is going to be. And one of the variances that's being sought is for a rear yard variation from to reduce the rear yard from 30 feet to 20 feet. And the property that is really impacted by that is theirs. So she and her husband were wondering if it's possible to remove the variation for the section adjacent to their property, or to better understand why that variation is needed up against their property, because it would have an impact. Did I say it all right?
That's why I'm not talking.
Okay, so I don't know if there's anybody who could answer that question for the Schreibers about what the need for the variation and.
20 feet and everybody else is 30.
Right, right. Well, no, what it is that the underlying zoning requires 30 feet. And what they're asking for is a variation throughout the entire development for the entire rear yards to be 20 feet. But the way the site plan is, because of the location of the road, really the people it affects is you. So that's her concern.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Thank you. Any other comments from the public in the room here? Anything to follow up?
Hello, Scott Mellon, 200 Kenwood Place. I'm just a regular citizen, but I like to pay attention to what's going on. I'm not sure about the law about having to disclose plans and process with the government. It seems like this is not a court and we're not in discovery right now. So when there's a private developer paying for engineering plans, I'm not sure if those are allowed to be shared even. Development is disruptive. Trees coming down is distressing, but private property rights are pretty well entrenched in the United States as a fundamental right. Change can always be hard. We've heard significant engineering report about stormwater. The people from St. Andrews rightfully are concerned about stormwater. But unless we think the engineer is not accurate, this stormwater plan is quite detailed, upsizing things to 150% of what's required, that the current runoff from the site is greater than post-development. And what I had other questions and concerns that Director York addressed. I was kind of frightened with a 20-foot street that clearly doesn't allow on-street parking of any type for a fire truck to pass by. If there's a car parked there, that's pretty narrow. I thought a cul-de-sac diameter was based on fire trucks being able to make it, but we've had a report that the fire commissioners okayed that. I might have misheard, but I heard lot sizes of 1,040 square feet, which just doesn't make sense, because with a 8-foot setback in front and a 20-foot in back, that leaves a 24-foot width, that leaves a 15-foot developable footprint. So I must have misunderstood something, but the lot size seemed concerning. But I think one of the biggest things, and Director York addressed this, is that by a matter of right, this site could be developed with up to 64 units. And for a developer to downsize to 40 is a tremendous economic consideration and increasing the amount of green space. From my perspective, I don't have a horse in this race. This is a good development. I'm impressed by the amount of work that's gone into it to get this far. Engineering reports, city departments, multiple meetings, 6 months of attorney's fees. Plus, it's probably court costs here right now, right? That's a higher billable. So, again, change is always distressing. The Moore Road is the access to Moore Road being closed is at the request of the city engineer to put the traffic to Birchwood Lane. We're going to have a trail going right through there. I mean, I think, again, I don't have a horse in this race, but it seems like the concerns of the neighbors have been addressed. I would encourage us to pass this to the city council with a positive recommendation. Time is money in development. And yes, it might be here for 100 or 200 years, but the next 12 months are what's most important to the developer. And if we want a successful higher end development, because this is not affordable housing, this is a mid to high end development, which will benefit the area, benefit the tax base, benefit Michigan City. We should do our best to facilitate that, in my opinion. And time is of the essence in real estate. And I would, again, ask you to approve it with a positive recommendation to the city council. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead, step up to the microphone here.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. I'm Ray Maloney. I live at 206 Moore Road. And that's in Long Beach Point Condominium Association. So I definitely wanted to speak perhaps for the condo association. A house I bought 4 years ago is the only house there. It was built in 1900 and it was built by Dr. Moore. So that's the house I live in now, and I think it's a wonderful community. I attended a meeting in August where we got a continuance, and I wasn't here for the following meeting, and I came here tonight and not knowing what to expect. And I think it's a wonderful development. I'm pro development. I know somebody's going to build something there. It looks like this team of people have a good plan. But after hearing the attorney from our neighboring community talk, and we don't have any of the documents he asked for, you know, let's not take a chance with water, okay, flooding, and let's do it right, and let's get those documents to our expert or his expert. It's probably going to amount to nothing, and we'll be fine, and this development will move forward. What's a week? What's 2 weeks? Let's not rush into it. Let's get the facts out. Let's have our due diligence, and let's do this project right. Because water, flooding, we've all dealt with flooding. I would hate to see my cellar fill up with water and ruin my home. That's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment in person? Is there anybody online? Anyone online to make a comment? Any public comment online? Any other public comment person? Any public comment? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Follow up.
If I may, I just want to give up. Mr. Novak, I'm sorry, Ms. Collins, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So here's my question. If I'm inclined to propose that this be continued, wants to allow this gentleman to have an opportunity to review documents, but I want to ask you a couple questions first, and you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. If this is continued to next month, is that going to have an impact? And I'm just making something up. Like the lender has said, if you don't get approval by a certain date, we're not going to agree to financing, or the financing package or change, or something of that like.
I don't know if there's any hard deadlines to meet. I know that there are some quotes that we have on certain projects that we'd have to, or certain aspects that we'd have to accept, otherwise they'll be stale. Not necessarily that's going to prevent it. However, I would say that we have been at this for numerous months. We've had numerous meetings. I recognize that there are neighbors that do have concerns. We are not required to meet with anybody. We've met with them. We're not required to provide our documents. We've provided them. I recognize that they want to see these other things. I do, but this is a situation where I don't want the tail to wag the dog. And I wholly recognize the concerns of the neighbors. I do. However, we have highly qualified engineers that have worked on this. The city has contracted with a highly qualified engineer on this. You have an engineer that sits on the plan commission. I know where this is going to go. They say they're not opposed, but it's going to be an audit of our report, and it's going to ask us to do a million things. We want to be good neighbors. We have been good neighbors. I would respectfully request you don't continue this. We want to have a project that moves forward.
Thank you. Has your engineer communicated anything to you, suggest that they have concerns over what I haven't even looked at, but what was handed up today, that they've looked at to say, oh, there are matters we should address based on what the St. Andrews Village Association provided to us?
My engineer has not specifically advocated that or said that to me, but what I can tell you is that what we're asking for is preliminary approval tonight. We still have to have additional steps that have to be met. We have conditions in Mr. Wallace's report that we have to accommodate. There are going to be modifications to this plan that are forthcoming. He's not going to let us avoid the stormwater ordinances. He won't let us avoid the stormwater ordinances. Our engineer, our number one direction, Tony's number one direction is comply with ordinance. So again, I recognize the concerns that they have, but this is only going to lead to delay. Tony is inevitably extremely frustrated with this project. And if not for some saving grace and talking him down, he's continuing this project because he has all intents of just pulling it and doing 68 units. So I don't want to see that. I live nearby. My kids go to Notre Dame school. I recognize the traffic concerns. I'm not somebody that does this and is just going to ignore the area. But I do believe that the city has a good team. I believe that we have a good team and we care about having a good project.
Thank you for your comment.
One statement to respond to what was said.
No. Public comment is closed. No. This is not a debate. Petitioners have presented evidence, and we've had an opportunity for public comment. And if the commissioners have a question of the petitioners, they can ask that. I would ask Attorney Hale if you can explain and remind for the commission purposes the opportunities for the commission to pass this on to the city council and the three options that there are, and that this will be reviewed by the city council for final approval. If you could kind of elaborate and follow up with that explanation for the benefit of the commission.
I indicated that ultimately your decision is to be based upon finding that the petitioner has satisfied all the requirements of our PUD ordinance, Article 25. The primary qualifications I laid out for you in the document you have in front of you. But the real standards are found in 2508, and if you find that the petitioner has met those standards, you are free to send this on to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation. You are equally permitted to send this down to the Common Council with an unfavorable recommendation based on some whatever considerations you feel have been persuasive to you. They can be ones that have been mentioned tonight, or they can be ones that you have developed on your own. I think that there's required to be findings to be made. I would note that Mr. York in his report included findings in his report that support a favorable determination. If the vote or the motion is to send it to the Common Council with an unfavorable recommendation, you should note some reasons, that is, some findings as to what you find that should not be, that should reflect an unfavorable result. So you want to deal with whether you approve or disapprove of this, whether you have findings, whatever those might be, and you can come up with your own. And you want to send it on to the Common Council, so the motion should address all three of those matters: approval or disapproval, adoption of some sort of findings in favor or against, and sending it to the Common Council or not. I would add, and I should add, that you are free to continue this matter. You've done it once before because you want more information. So that is a option that is open to you.
And this discussion is on the petition for the PUD.
Absolutely. The only thing we're voting on initially is on the preliminary PUD site plan approval or disapproval. After this, we would consider the preliminary or the primary development plan for the plat.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? We'll open up to a motion from the commissioners. 'Cause 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 ' Is there a motion to approve with the findings and the easement? Is there a motion to deny or a
yes.
motion to approve with conditions?
Mr. Hale would help me with this. I would like to make a motion that we approve the petition 903-24 and
Dash
that's it too.
dash 24-1
Yes.
with the
Yeah,
PUD.
One, yes, to the pass it on to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation that along with the Planning Commission report as stated with their recommendations and there for conditions as stated in there. And there was also a couple conditions I think Mr. Hale had referred to in his report that I would like to have included also.
Mr. President.
And it's to clarify that.
If I understood Mr. Klinder, his motion is to approve petition 903-24 sub 1, request for preliminary PUD site plan approval, to pass that on the entire application on to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation, and in support of that, to adopt the findings that were set forth in Mr. York's report, which he read to you, those findings, and the conditions, so that the approval would be subject to the conditions that he put in his report. And I believe that is the sub and substance of his motion.
Thank you.
And does that include the condition of the conservation easement?
No, it doesn't, but I'll have something else to say on that later.
Okay, does that clarify your motion, Mr. Klinder?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Motion has been made. Is there a second to that motion?
Support.
I will call for the vote. Ross Balling,
Yes.
Antonio Connolly,
Yes.
Brian Dabney,
Aye.
Bruce DeMedici,
Aye.
Daniel Granquist,
Yes.
Roscoe Hoffman,
Aye.
Fred Klinder,
Yes.
Rose Tejeda,
Yes.
Timothy Warner.
Aye.
So ends your vote. Motion approved.
That's the approval of petition 903-24 sub 1 on the PUD. Thank you, commissioners, for that. Then we move on to the next petition, 903-24 sub 2. This is the petition we read in earlier regarding the underlying preliminary plat for the subdivision approval there. Requesting major subdivision, primary plat approval of the residential. This is the underlying subdivision which the PUD would overlie based on all the conditions and variances that we've just approved. So we'll open up this petition and address this. Attorney Novak, would you like to address this one specifically?
Yes, I'll obviously keep this much more brief. So at the request of Skylar York and Attorney Hale, this was a two-step process. It's the PUD overlay, which we have done. And then it is also a request for a major subdivision based on the phases that we're going to develop. So as I indicated before, phase 1 would be along the farthest east part of the development. It would be 16 units as shown on the primary plat. And we are certainly here to answer any specific questions, but all the same relevant information that we provided earlier is applicable. So we ask for primary plat approval of tract 1 in front of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Novak. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners regarding this primary plat request for the major subdivision, the underlying tract? Seeing none, Mr. York, do you have any specific comment or follow-up report on the major subdivision?
I do. Yes, Mr. President, I do. And I would also add that the reason I did request, so sometimes PUDs come in and we approve them and then they come back for a subdivision at a later time. We moved one through a few months ago, or actually, I'm sorry, at the end of last year as a PUD and a subdivision. And in my opinion, it gives you as the planning commission a full, just so you can kind of see how all this works, how it all lays out. You can actually see the subdivision. They aren't coming back at another time, say 3 months later and asking, and then you're trying to reminding yourselves like, okay, well, what were the setbacks and things of that nature. You're being able to see what's being requested and approved, and the deviations, and then the adjustments as they are portrayed on the actual plat itself. Hence why we did it that way. I know that seems a little strange, but I really truly think it makes your decisions a little bit easier and gives you a full picture of what's going on. So with that, let me get my report brought up. Bear with me here. It's a very short report. The bulk of the information was in our previous report. Keep in mind that all the things that were approved before or suggested for approval before are still pertinent. They're still in play, and this preliminary subdivision doesn't change any of that. Okay, this is a report from Michigan City Planning Commission, October 22nd, 2024. This is case number 903-24 sub 2. This is the primary subdivision for the Moore PUD. And I would also add that this is the primary subdivision for tract 1 only. The petitioner is requesting a subdivision in conjunction with a PUD approval to construct 40 units of townhomes and duplexes. This specific request is for tract 1, which would be 16 units once it's built out completely. Staff analysis. The subject land is 8.5 acres of land currently with a single structure, a church, and a company parking lot. The church was constructed according to records in the late 1960s. At this time, the petitioner has purchased the land for residential development. I would also add, we found no records of previous subdivisions or any record that had been subdivided previously with respect to anything that we had done officially through the Planning Commission. This is probably because it was developed in the 60s and we didn't have, and probably not, may not have even been part of the city at the time, but now, hence, now it's part of the city, and in order to do what's being proposed, we have to subdivide. Staff recommendation, keep in mind, they asked for some deviations to minimal lot sizes. And I know that one of the public comments were the lot sizes. And let me explain that. If you look at the way the primary plat is laid out, the lots are the actual units themselves. That's how they're laid out here. So hence the lot sizes. Based on analysis and the information provided, along with the modified PUD code, staff recommends approval of 903-24 sub 2 with the following conditions. And the conditions that I would add would be the exact same conditions that were approved previously with the PUD. We just want to make sure that that stormwater information and all those conditions are carried on to this as well, and just kind of tie the two together, if you will. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. York. Any questions from the commissioners to Mr. York and staff report? Attorney Hale, do you have a separate report for the major subdivision?
I do, but I'll be very brief. This is my report on petition number 903-24 sub 2. Petitioner and owners Pyramid Properties, Inc. The request is for a primary plat approval of a major subdivision. We've been through this sort of thing before. We understand what this is. Our underlying zoning ordinance is about to be changed with the changes in our standards. And so your job is to determine if this primary plat complies with our subdivision ordinance and our zoning ordinance as to be changed pursuant by the Common Council if they so approve the PUD. We are required to have findings, so I would just request that any motion include either the findings that Mr. York included in his first report or other findings that you prefer.
Thank you, Attorney Hale. Any questions from the commissioners to the Attorney Hale's report? Comments? Okay, seeing none. This is a separate petition for the by the petitioners for a major subdivision under the subdivision ordinance. So we will open this petition up focused on the major subdivision, a primary plat approval of a major subdivision for the public comment. If you have any specific comments relating to the major subdivision, we'll not rehash the PUD, but if you have comments regarding the underlying major subdivision petition, we're open for public comment on that. Anybody present in the room or anybody online? Any comments, any public comment? Go ahead, state your name again, please.
Bridget O'Keefe, 9 Muirfield Drive. We just would like to request a copy of the record that was made tonight with regards to the stormwater issues that we did not receive copies of, the survey and the watershed documents. Would it be, and the staff report, would it be possible for us to get copies of these documents after the hearing?
Public documents, but and if I could have a copy of oh, we'll have copies of the minutes of the meeting here discussing all those and the testimony that was presented and all the documents that are entered into the record.
Can I ask one question, follow-up question to that? So does that mean those documents aren't available till the minutes are available, which is prior to the next month's meeting?
The minutes will be formally approved at the next meeting. So that's when they'll be publicly available. So I understand. Sylvia, do you have comments?
Yes. Your statement was correct.
Okay, so then we can't get copies of the documents that were submitted tonight until next month? I'm just trying to understand, I'm sorry.
With your approval, I'd be happy to submit the documents that were given to us by Mr. Wallace. I see no reason not to. He referred to them, he showed them to us, we've seen them. I have no reason to suggest to you that we not do that. So if you'll authorize me, I'll make sure she gets them. Good night.
We have a consensus of the commission.
I'm in favor of the disclosure as our attorney suggested.
That's a consensus of the commission, and thank you.
Thank you so much, we appreciate it.
Should have taken a vote.
No.
Scott Mellon, 200 Kenwood Place. The only thing I would like to add is it's a slight rehash, but not much. The variations he's asking for the PUD and this overlay are in furtherance of more green space and drainage, which I think makes them very worthwhile variances. The one thing I would push back on, I think his monument sign can be limited to 6 feet. I don't think he needs 8-foot signs. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comment from the public in person or any comments online? Any public comment online? Any further public comment? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Public comment is closed. Attorney Hale, I'll just ask if you have any further comment to address for the commissioners.
As indicated, I think it's appropriate that a motion to approve include approval and of the findings that were included in Mr. York's first report tonight under the sub 1. If you're not going to approve it, you should indicate some reason why you find that it doesn't meet with our subdivision ordinance or our zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Attorney Hale. Any further questions, comments from the commissioners? If not,
I have a question.
Yes.
Would it be suitable, if we are to share the developer's information, that we also share the information that they brought as well, so that they can at this point compare? Because that, I think it would be fair that their report and if we're going to turn it over to them, we have to be justified in doing so and giving their report to the developer's attorney.
We have no objection.
Well, the petitioners can always, the remonstrators can always submit their own information privately apart from any official action by the commission here. So
The reason why I stated that is because we want to make sure that if they're not in contact, we can cut out the lack of information distributed, and we can distribute it right now, because I believe that they will want it too. And I'm pretty sure Attorney Novak was going to state it, so I was just trying to catch it before he requested it.
any thoughts from the commission, consensus of the commission to grant that exchange of information?
Fine.
Okay, that seems fine and reasonable. Thank you very much. Okay, then we'll entertain a motion from the commission regarding the petition for primary plat approval of a major subdivision 903-24 sub 2.
I'll make a motion for approval as Mr. Hale has stated it. I would just let the minutes reflect that the motion I'm suggesting is what he stated.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second the motion.
And Mr. Attorney Hale, you want to clarify that somewise?
I believe that the motion was to approve the petition for primary plat approval and adopt the findings as presented in Mr. York's report earlier this evening.
I didn't want two conflicting statements in the minutes, so that's why I let you restate it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll call the roll.
I will call for the vote. Ross Bowling,
Yes.
Antonio Connolly,
Yes.
Brian Dabney,
Aye.
Bruce DeMedici,
Aye.
Daniel Grankwood,
Yes.
Roscoe Hoffman,
Aye.
Fred Klinder,
Yes.
Rose Tejeda,
Yes.
and Timothy Warner.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay. Motion has been approved. Both petitions have been approved with underlying findings of fact and conditions. The minutes will reflect that. Attorney Hale?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, we're not finished. Our ordinance requires, when we pass something on to the common council, that we do so by way of certification and resolution. And so I just handed you a proposed resolution and certification of the Plan Commission of the City of Michigan City, Indiana, which states basically what's what's happened, and that this was passed 9-0 and is to be sent on to the Common Council with an approval. It uses a lot more words than that, so I would ask you to take a look at it, and then a motion could be simply to approve the resolution as distributed just now.
We'll ask the commissioners to take a few seconds to skim through the resolution and certification of the Plan Commission. And after skimming that, ask any questions or make a motion.
I read it. I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution as set forth in the writing that we received shortly.
I'll second that.
I will call for the vote. Ross Balling,
Yes.
Antonio Connolly,
Yes.
Brian Dabney,
Aye.
Bruce DeMedici,
Aye.
Daniel Granquist,
Yes.
Roscoe Hoffman,
Aye.
Fred Klinder,
Yes.
Rose Tejeda,
Yes.
Timothy Warner.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Attorney Hale, any further comments or issues for us to address to follow up with this?
No, sir.
Okay, the petitions have been addressed, public hearing has been held, votes have been held, petitions have been passed. Thank you, petitioners. Thank you for Mr. Novak, Attorney Novak, for your presentation. And developer, thank you so much for your work in our community here. Appreciate your patience with all the time that it takes to develop property. On that, we'll move on the agenda then to any new business or old business. Sylvia or Mr. York, do we have any new business to address?
You will in the near future, and I will need to talk to Mr. Hale about this. It's kind of hot off the press. We will be, as Mr. Wallace alluded to earlier, there will be some stormwater things that are going to be coming that he will be taking to council, but likewise in our zoning code, we will be redacting and adding reference to the new stormwater. We'll be taking things out and adding things in so that we're consistent with what's going to be approved by council for stormwater review and what our code is going to refer it to. Does that make sense? So me and Mr. Wallace will be speaking soon, and I'll be folding Attorney Hell into that and how we need to do that, and we'll have a time frame for that soon. Only new business I have. Mr. President, will I get a chance to do a director's as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. Whenever you let me know.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda is public comments. So any general public comments not related to the petition, but any comments from the public that you'd like to address to the commission? Any public comments from in person or online? Any general public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comments. The next item are commissioner comments, but I will include Mr. Hale from the director's comments, and I would ask him to take a few minutes to explain why he's not here tonight, because I think it's some good information and good news for our community here.
Yes. If I might take the chance to address two things. I don't want people to think we're not transparent, and we did receive requests. We provided all information that we had on hand at the time. I have not completed a staff report until this week, and it was provided today to you prior to the meeting, and I provided it tonight. So the statement that we did not provide things is not true. And we provided things we have, and we responded back in a timely manner and said that we do not have certain things because they did not exist. That being said, counting more other things. Currently, right now, the reason I'm not with you guys is I'm in Philadelphia, and I'm at a transit-oriented development conference and a transit-oriented community conference. The reason why I'm here is I'm representing the city of Michigan City. Clarence and I are here. Clarence will be doing a presentation tomorrow about our new transit-oriented development and our new train station in downtown and the impacts and implications that it has both on Michigan City and really kind of a regional aspect as well. But we're also learning things from other communities similar to ours. There's not just because we're in Philadelphia, there are actually a lot of smaller communities here with rail service that are very similar. We've been visiting some of them, seeing what elements they have that make their communities TOD friendly or TOC friendly, as people say, transit oriented communities. There's lots of topics: affordable housing, development, good development. But there's bad things that we're learning about. You know, what are some of the things we want to avoid? So it's a really good conference, and we're getting to see a lot of things and do a lot of things. I've never been to a conference like this before, but it's interesting, all the different people who are here. They range from planners all the way from planners, engineers, nonprofits, community development corporations. It's crazy, all the different people who are involved in transit. I typically go to planning conferences, and I'm only with planners. And yeah, we have circular conversations. These conversations are very dynamic that we're having here. So it's very interesting. Anyways, that's why I'm not here with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. York, and thank you for attending that. I think that's a good indication of staff proactive engagement in our community, helping the development of our community. Do you have some comments, Sylvia?
Just wanted to let you know you guys have me.
Absolutely.
We have Sylvia. Thank you. Thank you for stepping in tonight to help with that. We'll thank Debbie for all the extra effort to take the minutes for our meeting tonight. Do we have any other commissioner comments? Do we have a motion?
Yes.
Second?
Need a second on that?
I want to.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we thank the public for your attention and attendance tonight.
Thank you.